Welcome to the July 3rd, 2025 Planning Commission hearing. I will call the hearing to order at 1:01 p.m. Ms. Carmen, can we please have roll call?
Thank you, Chair Wardlow. I'll begin with Chair Wardlow.
Here.
Commissioner Balke.
Here.
Commissioner DeLuccio.
Here.
Commissioner Peterson is not here. Commissioner Wiscombe.
Here.
We have quorum. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's get started with preliminary matters. Requests for continuances, withdrawals, postponements, or ex-agenda items. Ms. Arcega, do we have any?
Thank you, Chair Wardlow. Just one announcement that the next two Planning Commission hearings will be canceled. So our next Planning Commission hearing scheduled will be August 7th.
Got some time off. All right. Do we have any announcement or appeals?
No new announcements or appeals.
Okay. And that brings us to item C, review, consideration, and action on the June 12th, 2025 Planning Commission minutes. Are there any Planning Commissioner comments on the minutes?
Madam Chair, I just have one addition on page 4, and I apologize to Ms. Carmen, I didn't get this to you. 2A, it says Commissioner Wiscombe reported on the Waterfront Harbor Community Survey. That's, if you just add the word survey. Thank you.
Great. Is there any public speakers that would like to make comments on the minutes? Alrighty. Can I get a motion to approve the June 12th Planning Commission minutes?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Ms. Carmen, can we please have roll call?
Thank you, Chair Wardlow. I'll begin with Commissioner Balke.
Yes.
Commissioner DeLuccio.
Yes.
Commissioner Wiscombe.
Yes.
And Chair Wardlow.
Abstain. I think I was absent that day.
Okay. Motion passes. Great. Thank you.
Thank you, and that takes us to item D, comments from members of the public pertaining to items that are not on today's agenda. Due to time constraints, each person is limited to 2 minutes. Ms. Carmen, do we have anyone in person or remote that would like to give public comment?
Thank you, Chair Wardlow. At this time, I do not have any speaker slips for in-person public comment under general. If anyone in the audience would like to speak under general, they can come up to the podium at this time. But I'm not seeing any movement, and we don't have any participants online, although I will acknowledge that we received written correspondence under general.
Okay. We will move on to item 3. 301 East Yananali Street, the construction of 2 new non-residential buildings. The discretionary actions under consideration today are a front setback modification to allow bicycle parking spaces, an interior setback modification, a development plan, and a coastal development permit, as well as CEQA exemption. We have Kathleen Kennedy, project planner, with us to provide a staff presentation. Ms. Kennedy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. As you said, I'm Kathy Kennedy, project planner for this project. This is a proposal for a new commercial development located at 301 East Yananali Street. Providing you with the vicinity map to show you the project location. So it's in the coastal zone. It's a 3+ acre site in the corner of Garden and Yananali Streets, just south of Highway 101 and north of Cabrillo Boulevard, as shown here. There was some previous project reviews prior to this date. Back in 2015, the Planning Commission had a concept review of a proposal for the site. Changes were made after that, and then in 2019, the Planning Commission approved a revised project. That project, though, expired in 2022. So a new owner has come forward with a new project. What I've done is I've provided a comparison table between the previously approved project and the current one. It's in your staff report, page 5, if you'd like to refer to that. I have a slide on that if you'd like to compare those later on. But essentially, the previous project had less square footage, but it was taller than the proposed project. It had more parking, and it had setback modifications, but they were different setbacks, setback encroachments than what you will see today. In regard to the proposed project, These are the discretionary applications before you today. A front setback modification to allow the bicycle parking to encroach into the required setback along the Garden Street frontage. An interior setback modification to allow the vehicle parking to encroach into the setback, which is along Highway 101 to the north. A development plan to allow 39,597 square feet of non-residential development. It's in the coastal zone, so it requires a coastal development permit. And we have a CEQA determination that the project is exempt from further environmental review under section 15183. Here's a site plan of the project showing the location, like I said, in the corner of Garden Street and Yananali, next to the city-owned supply yard here, Highway 101 again to the north. We'll take a look at the buildings themselves. So there are two buildings. This is Building A here. It kind of wraps around this courtyard. And then Building B in the back. So this is the first floor. This exhibit shows that the blue is the retail areas that are proposed, and then the tan would be a food and beverage facility. And then on the second floor, just a portion of Building A has a second floor here in the back, and then this Building B has also a second story. So it steps back, as you can see, only one story in the front on Yananali. Here are the elevations. So I'm only showing these elevations. I know the applicant will be showing you the project from various views. So I'll just show these. Here's from Yananali. So this is the corner of Garden, Yananali here. In the front here, a lower one-story. You can see the higher second-story elements in the back. The driveway is over in this area, and to the far right is the ESHA habitat restoration area and Laguna Channel. And then the lower elevation shows the Garden Street elevation. So to the left here is the on-ramp to Highway 101. It's a very tall wall that I'm sure you're aware of here. And then move forward towards Yananali Street. Here's the entrance, pedestrian entrance to the development. Let's see. We have a little glitch here for some reason. Uh-oh. Sorry about that. I had a site plan. Let's see if it... Okay, I'm going to have to go to another one. Not sure what happened there. So I wanted to show this site plan as the main site plan for the project and go over the project description. So again, Garden Street to the left, Yananali Street along here. There are two buildings, again, one here, one in the back. There's this courtyard in the center here, another courtyard area here, a entry plaza area in this corner. The bicycle parking is proposed. All the bicycle parking is here on the left side, 24 spaces in the setback. Existing driveways are to be removed and a new driveway along this area here. Along East Yananali Street, there would be a new parkway. Currently, there's no parkway, so a new parkway here, new street trees, a widening of the sidewalk, and a dedication of land to accommodate those improvements. The street trees, New Zealand Christmas trees, is the street tree in this area that will be planted. Over to the right here is the restoration area. Laguna Channel will be restored, all non-natives removed, planting of new native trees and protecting existing native trees. At the top of the bank would be a new wrought iron fence and then 50-foot wide ESHA area, so creation of a new creek buffer area in this area. And then another fence along this area here, which would be a split rail wooden fence. I'm just gonna have to hop back up here to where I was. So this project did go through design review at HLC. They reviewed the previous designs, and then this current design was reviewed in January of this year. They had some minor comments regarding the design, suggesting adding Spanish revival detailing to the project and adding some more color, and then looking for ways to activate both the interior of the development around the courtyards and the exterior that faces East Yananali Street. They were in support of both of the setback modifications and stated that they could make the project compatibility findings. In regard to the zoning ordinance and consistency, this project is located in the Cabrillo Plaza specific plan, SB2, which you are all familiar with. In this case, it's Area D up here in the upper right. The previous owner did the dedication of land to allow the construction of Garden Street all the way down to Cabrillo Boulevard, and the dedication of the land for East Yananali Street to extend all the way to Laguna Channel. There are a number of development regulations in the specific plan, so I'll go through those. Also in regard to what's allowed in Area D, so each area in the specific plan allows different uses. In this one, it is those that are allowed in the M1 light manufacturing zone. The maximum number of square feet for the development is 45,150, a maximum height of 2 stories. And if office use was proposed, which is not in this proposal, only 25% of it could be office. In regard to the development regulations, in regard to traffic and circulation, there are regulations about parking, but because this is in the AB 2097 area, it qualifies for that, and parking is not required. However, the project does provide 98 parking spaces. In regard to the alternative transportation incentives, the project does provide the adequate bicycle parking spaces. In regard to public improvements, they have completed the improvements I just mentioned of extending Garden Street and extending East Yananali, and there are other proposed public improvements that I mentioned on East Yananali Street that would make them consistent with this regulation. In regard to visuals and aesthetics, they meet the setbacks, and we'll go over setbacks again shortly. In regard to height, the maximum is 2 stories and 30 feet, which is what the project complies with. If it were to go over 30 feet, and actually the previously approved project did, if it went over 3 stories or 45 feet, a height relation study would be required to show that it does not block the mountain views. But in this case, like I said, it is 2 stories and it's under 30 feet. And it does require review by HLC. Other regulations related to geology and drainage are standard. These are required project requirements anyway. They submitted a geotechnical report and a drainage stormwater report already. These are reflected in the conditions of approval. In regard to water use, there is a limitation on water use based on the size of the lot. It was calculated to be just over 10 acre-feet per year. Added a condition of approval to just kind of follow up with that to make sure that's they're meeting that limit or not going over the limit. And they're required to prepare a disaster evacuation safety plan. Excuse me. In regard to noise protection, the applicant prepared a noise assessment report to discuss the outdoor areas. Because it's next to the freeway, it's a high noise area. The specific plan says where feasible, outdoor areas should be 60 or below. The report does show that some areas are 60, some are a little higher than that. But we feel like that's consistent because as feasible, they're meeting it as much as they can given the location next to the freeway. And they've moved the buildings. If you look at the site plan, the parking is close to the freeway and the buildings are closer to the road. In regard to the interior noise levels, they're required to be no greater than 45 in interior. So this is here to show you the setbacks that are required. So the bicycle parking, like I mentioned, is in the setback. And then the vehicle parking is located in the setback in the rear. So we can talk about that. In terms of height, the height of the building does vary from 16 to 29 feet 6 inches, so under 30 feet. The building size, which is per the specific plan, can be no greater than $45,150. It is $39,597. So these arrows point to the encroachment areas, and here's the bicycle spaces here in the setback, and here along Highway 101, the bicycle spaces encroach somewhat into the setback there. So we believe the findings can be made for these modifications. For the bicycle parking, they are providing the required number of bicycle spaces. It's in an appropriate location on the site. It's close to the entrance of the development. It does not conflict with the pedestrian access or sidewalks. And as you know, in Title 30, we do allow bicycle parking spaces in the front setback, so we would feel that it would be supportive here as well, since that may be a change in this ordinance eventually. In regard to vehicle parking, it's provided at the rear of the site. It's adjacent to the 101 on-ramp and 101. There are no other uses adjacent there that would be affected by or on this encroachment. And then the HLC was supportive of both encroachments. For the development plan application, the project involves the construction of the 39,597 square feet. When the city adopted our non-residential growth management program, this square footage was already accounted for under the category prior approved specific plan project category. So it takes into account this 45,150 square foot limit at that time. So we don't need to get a new allocation for this. It's already been approved. But even so, a development plan approval with the findings is still required. So the findings can be made for the development plan because it does comply with the zoning ordinance. It's consistent with the principles of sound community planning by being consistent with the general plan, the local coastal plan, which I'll go over those policies shortly, the zoning ordinance, the development regulations of the specific plan that we just went over, and the city's design review guidelines. It won't have a significant adverse impact upon the aesthetics or character of the area. It would be compatible with the neighborhood, and it's consistent with the traffic management strategy in terms of traffic generation and the square footage allocations. In regard to policy consistency, it is in the coastal zone. Looked at the general plan policies and coastal land use plan policies to see how they are can be applied to this project. In regard to land use, the non-residential floor area is limited by the specific plan. In regard to public access, the project does provide vehicle and parking and bicycle parking, which is important for public access to the coast. Also, widening of the sidewalks and adding on-street parking helps in that regard. In regard to biological resources, the project includes the restoration of Laguna Channel, the creation of that 50-foot wide habitat area from the top of the bank, and the fencing that is allowed within that protection, within the habitat area to protect it. In regard to scenic resources and visual quality policies, the project would not block scenic views of the foothills and the mountains, and the design was supported by the Historic Landmarks Commission. In regard to policies related to coastal hazards and safety, the tsunami risk condition of approval has been added to the project. The project would be built above the base flood elevation. Liquefaction would be addressed in the geotechnical report, and the soil contamination will be addressed through the approved corrective action plan. And finally, in regard to policies, traffic generation, we have a traffic analysis report that was prepared that's attached to your staff report. This was reviewed by city staff. It was also peer reviewed by a traffic consultant. Determination was made that there's no project-specific traffic effect, meaning that the peak hour traffic generation would be less than 1% of intersection capacity, those impacted intersections. We have two conditions of approval to essentially make sure there would not be a traffic impact. If there are any changes of use at the site, we at staff would like to review those changes to make sure they're still consistent with the traffic management strategy. And then we have a transportation demand management condition of approval, requires the project to include incentives to reduce project traffic, such as providing MTD information to employees and providing bicycle parking spaces. The findings for the coastal development permit can be made because the project is consistent with the Coastal Act and is consistent with the local coastal plan policies that I had just went over. In regard to environmental review, the project qualifies for streamlined review under CEQA guidelines section 15183. Environmental review for projects consistent with the general plan for which a program EIR was certified is limited to those effects that are peculiar to the project site. If an impact is not peculiar to the project site and has been addressed in the prior EIR, or can be mitigated with uniformly applied development policies and standards, an additional EIR need not be prepared. In the case of this project, we did do a full environmental checklist. I know there's some confusion about being, if the project's exempt, then we didn't do CEQA review, but there is a thorough analysis of environmental resources done as part of this project. We completed the checklist. It's essentially an initial study checklist, and that's attached to your staff report. We've gone through all of these issues to determine whether there are any impacts or not. The findings can be made for the CEQA determination because there were no impacts peculiar to the site, there were no potentially significant impacts, and there were no mitigation measures that are required. So I did mention all the findings. There's this complete list of findings in your staff report and with all the details for your review, but these are the findings that are needed for this project. And our staff recommendation is to approve the project, making the findings in the staff report for these, the CEQA determination, the 2 setback modifications, the development plan, and the coastal development permit, subject to the conditions of approval in the staff report. And that concludes staff's presentation. I wanted to let you know that we have other staff here. Teresa Schoting from Transportation Planning is here, if you have questions, and Julia Peugeot, Environmental Analyst, is here. And we also have a Historic Landmarks Commissioner Representative, Michael Drury, is here also for questions.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. That now takes us to the presentation from the applicant. Please state your full name and relationship to the project. You'll have 15 minutes to present. Ms. Carmen, would you please start the timer?
Brian Cornell, project architect. With me today are Joseph Miller and David Fishbein, the project owners, John Kuykendall, our project planner, David Stone, our archaeologist and many other things, and Scott Schell from ATE, and Dana Bauer, our landscape architect. I'm going to have Joseph come up briefly and kind of give you an overview, and then I'll come back up.
Hi.
Hi.
Good morning or good afternoon. Right on the cusp, I think. Thanks, Brian. We appreciate being here. It's a result of years of hard work. My partner David and I have a long history. I met my wife in Ojai when we were 14 years old. I'm a lot older than that now, and have been coming up. David got married to his wife up here too. So we've been spending a lot of time here our whole lives, but made a real almost move about 5 years ago when we bought this site. It's a very special site, as you know, we can talk about a little more. And our company is really dedicated to the promotion of independent retail and restaurants. We started in Los Angeles, have done projects across the country, but as I mentioned at the beginning, this is kind of home. And at the beginning of this year, opened a project called The Post down the street. So you can get a sense of what we're about. It's about finding local businesses, local restaurants, mixing them with kind of regional independence and creating special atmospheres. And that's what we're really hoping to do here. As I mentioned, the site's extremely special, the views of the mountains where it sits in the funk zone. And, you know, we can get into the project a bit. Brian will do a much better job than I do, but it's only to say that we're like really honored to be able to be building this. We hope that we've been good stewards and shown that we're committed to doing something innovative and interesting that fits within the community context And I'm excited for Brian to take us into the project a bit. So thank you for having us here.
Thank you.
Okay. The history is always something I love, so I'm going to start with that. This, of course, is the site. This is the site in 1853, so it was an estuary. And you can see how the estuary fed into where Mission Creek is today. If we go to 1928, 3 years after the earthquake, it all got filled in. In fact, you can see the old racetrack, the remnants of the old racetrack here. And interestingly, this larger parcel right here is where the Fernald House was, and it got moved down somewhere down in that, wherever it is now, you know. So moving on to 1953, year I was born, the freeway is finally going through, but it's still a completely, you can see, pretty much a vacant parcel. And then what we have today. So just a little over 3 acres, 3.16, about 2/3 of it is the Laguna Channel. And oh, by the way, I wanted to go back to this one. Here you can see the Laguna Channel was this very strict man-made channel that was placed there after the earthquake. So we have a 50-foot setback from that channel area, and that totals about 2/3 of an acre. So just quickly looking at the site, you're familiar with it, but I'll go through these, looking down Garden to the north, across the street, beginning to see the wall going down to the on-ramp, down Yananali, back looking west on Yananali, and then, of course, that freeway wall that Kathy mentioned at the on-ramp, and then the view of the site from the freeway. So this is our site plan, which Kathy has done a great job, I think, in explaining. Basically, we've got about 30,000 square feet on the ground floor. She indicated where the restaurants were. We have a series of little courtyards, a little secret courtyard here, a plaza here off the corner, and then a pretty reduced second floor, only about 9,000 square feet in a couple of building masses. The story poles that you saw on the site, this was the location. I think I explained that it was kind of a difficulty getting that arranged with the operator. So important to note, and I pointed this out, that there's a large gap in the view corridor, if you will, with these buildings that was not reflected in those story poles. Little sections through the site which show how we sort of cascade back from Yananali up to the second floor. You can see that height limit line, and you can see the existing grade line down here, which is reflected in this section as the amount that we're going to be raising it up. Another site section that shows that restaurant area, which we're hoping will have amazing mountain views. And then just diagrammatically, the buildings, this site is really, it is in EPV, thanks to Bill Wright, but it is also right there at the head of the beginning of the funk zone. So we really wanted to make a blend of architecture. We kind of borrowed inspiration from Irving Gill, and thinking about this traditionally was a more industrial kind of a place in the city. And so we wanted these buildings to just be very simple and reflect that kind of sensibility. This is the back elevation that would face the freeway, and this archway becomes a really dramatic element for the entrance of people coming in cars to the site. So I wanted to show you what the 2019 approved project was. It was interesting. This was intended to be something of a market. The parking was in front, and we had an element on the corner. There were a couple of buildings. Looking back at the site now, these are photo sims that reflect just the architecture, so we don't have the landscaping, and Dana Bauer is going to come up later and talk about the landscape on the site. But there is the raw building and how it is reflected relative to mountain views from the corner of Garden and Yananali. And then this, by the way, was that old project, just FYI. And then another view looking more down Garden Street and what the massing of that building is. This was actually taken with a photograph of the story poles, so you can see that story pole line right here and how that is reflected in the actual architecture. We're really excited about this courtyard, this entry plaza, which Dana will talk more about. And then finally, a view of, from the freeway to kind of get an idea of the massing. We will be removing the rocks, don't worry. And with that, I'd like Dana to come up and give you a little overview of the landscape. You can just push this and use the mouse if you want to point.
What's this for?
This is just to go to the
Oh, up
next
and
slide.
down.
Yeah.
Got it, got it. Hi, it's so great to be here today, and I'm really excited to share our hopes for the landscape here. And let's see, so starting with the plan, I think what I really wanted to point out is that we are staying consistent on the right-hand side of the slide with the ESHA. We are maintaining the planting as is, and we are going to remove, as is consistent with the habitat restoration plan, invasive and non-native plants where possible. Going up to that habitat is a freshwater marsh. When you extend sort of to the west, up to the top of bank, the Esha Bank, that habitat is going to be a riparian woodland, which is also existing, and which again, we would be maintaining what is there and removing what is invasive and non-native where possible. Beyond that, we wanted to actually strengthen the surrounding habitats that are existing in this area by creating continuity with those on our project. So along Yannon Alley, we have a plant palette, which is a coastal meadow, and that sort of wraps around that corner along Garden Street as well. And then along the Caltrans boundary along the freeway, we are keeping a lot of that mature planting in order to keep that screening between the parking and the freeway, filtering sound and also the visuals between those two spaces. But that is going to be a continuation of the oak woodland, which is kind of the native habitat in a larger sense across the area. Just in terms of the courtyard, and we'll get to it a little bit more in the view. So our primary pedestrian entrance is at the corner of Garden and Yannon Alley, so that's just here. And what we've worked really hard to create something that we think is incredibly welcoming to the public and inviting. We have a water feature here, very generous seating, wrapping the whole courtyard. And so that is our primary pedestrian entry. And then further to that, we really were thinking about the pedestrian experience along Yannon Alley and have created this very lush landscape to produce shade and also just an incredible landscape to experience. So here's a view of that. You're seeing the view into that corner courtyard. And the plant palette shifts from these kind of native palettes, which are a nod to the kind of historic habitats here. But once we get closer to the architecture, we are choosing plants and trees that are more complementary to the architecture, and also which refer to the incredible and iconic gardens that you have here, like Lotus Land and the Botanical Garden. And they are Mediterranean and subtropical plants, but climate appropriate, low water, low maintenance. That is a shift as you enter kind of the inner workings of the project. The next view is the view entering from the parking. So it's sort of an extension of the vehicular entrance, so from the driveway and the parking. And so again, we're trying to create something very welcoming to the public, an invitation. And in this case, we have planting which is now growing up onto this walkway, which connects the second floor. We have vines and are looking to make that also a landscape experience from both the first floor and second floor. And then we have a really special destination, which is a cactus garden at the courtyard, I guess at the north end. Here, a view back once you've entered through this kind of pedestrian courtyard, and now we're looking into that first kind of limb of the project. And one of the things that we collaborated on as a team was creating something that felt very much like this sort of this village, something a little bit eccentric and appropriate to the funk zone, but which had these generous open spaces as you moved through. And so we have our first courtyard, which shows, really wonderful planting that's creating shade and a comfortable environment to spend time. We have raised planters here, which enable people to sit along the edge. Moving further in through, that walkway through the project, we're now looking at the cactus garden, and the cactus garden is open at the inside and has seating inside as well. This view is an aerial view looking back toward that corner pedestrian entry and just shows kind of how the plants shift and change as you move through the project. So we're looking in the foreground, the desert garden, and then extending back into the more Mediterranean and subtropical palette. And I think that wraps it up for me. I don't know, you're coming back?
Sure. I think that is it. We'll reserve that minute and 39 seconds, and happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. That now takes us to public comment. Do we have any members of the public that would like to make comments on this item?
Thank you, Chair Wardlow. At this time, I don't have any speaker slips for this item. If anyone in the audience would like to speak on this item, they can come up to the podium at this time. And I'm not seeing any movement. We still don't have any participants online, and we did receive written correspondence from Brady Thurman, Marissa Mason, Teddy Minogue, Tony and Jeannie Bortolazzo, Grace Gates, and Paulina Kahn. And I will give it back to you.
All right. Well, do I have any questions from my fellow commissioners? And if we could start our questions with anything in relation to HLC, because we have an HLC representative here with us today, that would be great. Who would like to go first?
You got your screen up, I hope?
DeLucio.
First, okay, that's all good. Can I, HLC, can I talk to you, please? I forgot your name, I'm so sorry.
I'll get up and,
What is your name again?
Michael Drury.
Thank you. Looking at the design here, is this similar to what you saw when it came before you? And maybe you can just address a couple of suggestions that you had given to the project.
Well, we felt it was ready for your perusal, and I think as presented, it's exactly, I'm thinking it's exactly the same, right? But what I think I still see is we say activate certain structures, right? Activate the wall, some details, some quirkiness. Doesn't have to go funk zone quirky, but that's kind of the idea. Consider adding more Spanish revival detailing or architectural expression to the project is one of the things I think we're pretty strong about. Simplify the landscape design if possible, as it seems too busy. I think it still does. Is it proper to comment in that respect? I'm just going to do it anyway. Consider adding lighting to the architecture. I think that is necessary. I think this is what's going to come up in front of us when you return the project to us. And Mr. Cornell is really good at detailing stuff. As Bill Mahan used to say, poetry. And details are everything. Consider adding bold patterns to the hardscape. I think that's fairly obvious. One of the things I'd like to see when it comes before us again is the shadow, because they're really those iterations are fairly direct and uncompromising. But shadows are going to ameliorate that kind of really hardscape. But again, the commission does thank the applicant team for their time, presentation, and work to get to this hearing. So we're ready for you to send it back to us, and then we'll massage it and break his heart, and the landscape designer.
Well, that's what I want to hear. Also, one other thing, you had to make compatibility findings.
We did.
And I guess one of the major findings was to preserve the views of
Absolutely,
the
always.
mountains on that, so you were able to make that finding, obviously.
We were. We
Okay.
made all the neighborhood findings, compatibility, the views, and what else is there? A lot. Historic resources. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, that's very good,
You're very
very
welcome.
helpful. And I wanted to just
Very
ask the applicant something, if I may. Well, the applicants are getting up. Okay, hi.
Hi.
So, I know that you're only doing 29 stories, 9 feet high, right? Correct, about 30 feet almost. If you wanted to go 45, you'd have to probably do some more analysis and then get approved by the HLC. But I believe that you did some further analysis anyway to show that you would still be able to see the views of the mountain and everything. So maybe you can tell us a couple of things that were done in that aspect?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it was an enormous amount of work. As I said, the site's a very special site, mostly because of how it sits and is framed within the mountains. We spent a lot of time looking at various building heights, and I think you acknowledged accurately, we could have gone higher or had more second story for that matter. But for us, making the experience both coming through the site, as a pedestrian, but also within the site was very important to us. If we had built up too high, you wouldn't get the majesty of the site. So the things that we used were mostly, photo renderings, and then, as you saw, the story poles there. So we really spent a lot of time. It's been 4 years since we built the site, thinking about the best project here. And it was so a combination of technology and then just observation. Where's the light coming from? To the commissioner's point, where the shadow's coming from, how can we make this building great at all seasons and at all times? So a couple different modalities that we used for that.
Okay, I have one more question, having to do with, I did walk your other site, your other development, tell me, this is the post, and this one's the platform.
That one's the post,
This is the platform, okay. How do you, and that one was already there, the buildings are already there, correct?
Yes.
And then you just develop it from there. You're starting all over again. So how are these going to be different in the sense of the businesses and starting from fresh? How does that help you do something?
Yeah, it's
different?
an interesting thing. The reason that we bought that set of buildings down there was almost because they mimicked what we probably would have built there. They're mostly one story with some two story. They're oriented to let light in, and they have a central courtyard that allows for both gathering in the courtyard and exploration around the edges. On that site, I'm glad that it seems that it was there forever, but our major intervention there was to build walkways around so that people can experience the perimeter of the site. For us, movement through is very important. So I would say that this differs very slightly, but only because the reason that we bought those existing buildings was because we knew we could get the layout to do what we wanted it to do. And here, we're just getting it to do what we want to do from the start. And you'll see, as I mentioned, a lot of similarities. Center courtyard with wings coming out, and the ability to move through the site and really spend time in it. So I think those are kind of some similarities. We lucked out and had some beautiful material to start with over there too.
Okay, those are my questions for now. I'll have some comments later, but thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm happy to hang or come back up and down. I'll stay close.
Thank you. Commissioner Wiscombe?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Miller?
I'll just stay up.
Yeah, you just jog up, and, get your exercise for the day. Yeah. I just really have one question. When looking, I love the concept. I've been through the Post. I've eaten at the restaurant like 4 times.
Oh, good.
It's really great. So my question to you, we're kind of this. The Funk Zone's kind of an art zone too, and I wonder if you've considered at all making some of these whatever you want to call them in the buildings, rooms or whatever, into studios for artists where they can work and people can observe them working and buy the artwork. Usually those the ones in Seattle have like roll-up doors that, so they're just like garage spaces.
Yeah.
Have you considered that at all?
100%. I think that when we think about, we're at a point here where we want to make the best envelope and the best experience for our customers who are coming through, and also our customers who are going to rent space from us and hopefully run successful businesses. And what we try and do at this point is make the spaces interesting, but have the ability to turn into whatever they might be. Now, we need to identify the restaurant spaces because of utilities, but with regard to what we call in our business dry uses, meaning anything from a clothing store to an art gallery, they're totally available. And so I think that like art galleries, studio spaces are something that we think of a lot, and we have in different projects that we've done. And if we can find a great person who has that business, we would absolutely love to have art here. I think it's a huge piece of what we're doing. I think that there are some ground floor spaces that could be great for that because they have very high ceilings. And as we look at, we don't have renderings that show it specifically, but the windows can be totally open and could also be roll up in the future if we wanted that differentiation. And then the second floor is quite lovely too, with patios, really open door space and views to the mountains. I think either of those could be great spaces for art spaces.
Okay, I think actually there are a couple artists at the 101 Garden site now, where the hotel is slated to go. I think there's a couple artists working there that would probably love to have, a space to work and do their work and also sell their work.
I think it's a great use. We have it at a number of projects. We would love that. But
Great,
we're
okay.
early days, but it's a great use for us.
Okay, and then my next question, since you talked about the restaurants, there's 3, is that right?
There are 3 restaurant spaces.
Okay, one's upstairs.
Yeah.
And that one's the what you call the fine dining one. Okay, yeah. And then the one on the closest to the Laguna Channel, that's casual?
Yeah, we'd imagine, the level of is going to be within a box because we're in Southern California at the beach. So even, I would say if you've been to Ospi, that's like probably the one on the roof where it's not, tweezer fine dining.
Okay,
But again,
yeah.
we're early days, so who
Yeah,
knows? But
yeah.
I think fun, enjoyable. There are very few places in town in such a beautiful climate that have open patios on a second floor to look out. And again, the positioning is so special that I think that view out to the mountain is going to be lovely. But listen, we'll have to see where it goes. But I don't really like eating at places like that. So David doesn't either. So we generally don't end up with them. I think that's a more high energy, fun place, probably similar to Ospi. In the corner with this, what we call the Secret Garden here, again, probably a level down even from that in terms of price point and accessibility, like cafe, fun, all day type of dining. And then further towards Garden, we really envision that as a bakery, more baked goods. You can walk up and order at a counter type of situation.
Okay.
So we always try and mix it. The Post is a very small project, and we have Little King opening soon, but hopefully you'll see there, Osby being the sort of fancy place, and then we're working on a cafe really hard for a space. We'll see.
So
And
what you referenced it, what's it called?
Little King is a coffee shop. They're in up in the valley.
Okay.
They have a spot, and they're opening this month. So everyone that's
Okay.
listening, come visit when they open. But yeah, a mix of uses is very important to us. A mix of price points and a variation in style of dining and cuisine. We're always thinking about how to make it enough where people want to come visit. And hopefully we've designed a project that can accommodate those things.
Great, okay. Yeah, your concept supports some of our general plan, for supporting small businesses and things like that, and it sounds like that's what you're trying to do.
That's the
here,
one
too.
unifying thing across everyone
Yeah.
we do is you can see just from they're small by nature of this square footage.
Yeah, okay, thank you for that. I
You're
really
welcome. Thank
appreciate
you.
it. And I'm sorry, I should have asked if Chair Wardlow, you or Commissioner Bauke had any questions for Commissioner Drury, so he can.
I have some when my
Before I
time
do.
comes.
And Commissioner Bauke.
Okay. Let's have Mr. Cornell up first. Or unless Mr. Drury has to do you need to leave soon or something? I wasn't sure. I was going to ask Mr. Cornell a couple questions first. Brian, looking at your program for the site, could you describe what you consider the front versus the backs of these buildings? Because we have some standards in our guidelines. I'm trying to understand. I mean, usually fronts of buildings are where the activity takes place, and the site has a number of constraints, and I'll give you have a lot of latitude on that. But could you describe where's the activity going to happen and where the fronts of these buildings are?
Well, I don't think there's any question that we really acknowledged the fact that, you know, Yananali is really not a pedestrian street, and where it goes is, you know, off towards the sewage treatment plant and the desalinization plant. And so, you know, this is clearly an inward-facing courtyard experience. And so I think one of the reasons, as Dana explained, we wanted to heavily landscape that Yananali frontage is really just to make it more of a landscape experience than some kind of a retail experience. We have openings onto Yananali where we want to have, you know, that expression to the street, but in reality, I think people are going to be coming here from their car, or they're going to be coming from the funk zone, entering through this courtyard, and that's going to be the experience. So, you know, admittedly, it doesn't meet the you know, absolute prescriptive standard of a pedestrian, you know, street frontage, but it's a very unique site, and I think that this is the right way to treat it.
Okay. Following up, what is the linear frontage of the Yananali building face?
That whole building, can I take a measurement here?
Yeah, I mean, I tried to do it, scale it, but I didn't want to. You have plans that you actually scale. But that's a problem when we don't get physical plans any longer. We're guessing when we're trying to do this. on
So
computers.
from here to there is about 280
Okay, I came up
feet,
with
so-
290, so, okay.
So it's about a half a block.
Okay, half a block, okay. So those are the questions I had for you.
Okay.
For Mr. Drury,
Yes, sir.
I happened to watch your January 29th meeting and listen to the comments of the members of your body. And there was a number of comments, and it's bullet 2 in your minutes, which is consider activating the parking and street sides of the development.
Yes.
And there was a lot of language that Mr. Lemvik and others had on that, and I'm trying to understand, because as Brian says, he's got a situation here that the frontage of Yananali is not the most pedestrian street, but at the same time, we have a 290-foot long facade, which isn't broken up in any shape or form. And I noticed Mr. Lemvik was talking about possibly punching a hole in it or doing something in which would actually tie the Yananali frontage to that central courtyard, as an example, with a paseo or a gateway or something. Where in this process, if we believe that's an appropriate thing, do we make that a condition and send it back to you guys to figure that out with Brian? Or how does this process work?
Commissioner
And what
Bakke,
would you like to see from us?
I think it's a question of where you put the details and where how you activate. It could be with a cornice, it could be with a decorative window pattern. If there's any openings, maybe make an opening, an obtruse one up in some corner. Just something to break the, because when you think about that as built, it's going to be a very long mass of white with beautiful arches in it. But the shadows will help, and so will the landscape. But I think in terms of activating, it should be, wrought iron perhaps lamps, perhaps cornices, as I was suggesting. And that's going to, the architects, I'm a landscape painter, but I have been on the commission quite some time. But the people we have on the commission are almost all architects. In fact, they all are. And I think they would be able to come up with solutions, and I think my experience with Mr. Cornell is that he's open to all that stuff. And I think there's a suggestion it's Moorish in design, but it's not really Moorish in detail. I would like to see more of that Mediterranean look. That's my take on the comments. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and
Okay.
I was going to ask you about a couple guideline requirements, and these are the guideline, the general architectural design guidelines that were adopted in 2017, the infill guidelines, and I believe they apply in this case. And there are two pieces which say, organize the street facade of a large development or building into several visibly distinct parts to create the appearance of several small buildings. And I'm wondering how, in this case, especially the knowledge frontage, meets that standard.
It probably doesn't exactly. I think it would need to have like a wall coming past two arches, let's say, then making a shadow, making a volume change. And there's a number of ways to make these changes in terms of what you look at various times of day. I'm no architect, but that's kind of what I would think.
Can I help answer that?
Please.
Because I think it is important, I mean, that, we've thought a lot about this Yananali frontage. And by the way, Commissioner Boss asked me to do a video, and I did. So let me know when you want me to see that, because I forgot. But I
We would
did
love to see the
reserve a
video.
minute
That
and
would be great.
Yeah, we'll do
38
that as
minutes.
soon as we
Okay,
get to
so-
this.
So this is that elevation along,
Sit down.
I want to maybe ask you a question. This is that facade along Yananali, and I would argue that we have done a lot to break it up. As the plan showed, it kind of sawtooths along that frontage, and we've made a particular point to change the elevations of these buildings. Admittedly, I want this architecture, again, sort of in the spirit of Irving Gill, to be very, very simple. Admittedly, because I think this is bridging between EPV and the funk zone, I don't see it as having, even though we may disagree on this and we'll have to work through it, a lot of ornament. I want the architecture to be simple and the focus on the people that are in there selling their wares and doing their work. But I would argue there's a lot of variation along that frontage.
But Brian, you would agree that it's not broken up into multiple buildings, correct?
Well, I do believe that it is intended to appear to be multiple buildings.
Oh, okay. Just-
I'll go back to the site plan.
Yeah, because one of the comments in which I think Mr. Lundvik was trying to get at least my understanding, is you've got this central courtyard that has a lot of activity, but you don't know it exists unless you're internally within it, which isn't, to me, I think, a lost opportunity for your client to have that connection. And so, to the extent, I don't know, I like the project. I think we're missing an opportunity is really where I come from. And it doesn't seem to be consistent with those two, a couple of provisions in the code, so.
Well, I would just respond that I take Mr. Carnell's comments to heart. I don't think we're asking for a lot of ornamentation, but I think we're asking for some quirkiness. I would leave it at that.
Okay. Those are the questions I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bauke. I appreciate all the questions from my fellow commissioners. I have just one or two questions. I'll start with HLC, if that's okay. Yeah. So at a high level.
I was ready for a drink.
We're still trying to get you out of here early. It's still going to be an early day,
Okay.
guys. So along the lines of Commissioner Bauke's points of breaking up the building, I like how the building looks. I think that Brian has done an amazing job of trying to give depth and so that it does look a little different than just a straight wall. But speaking to the quirkiness and the idea of having making it a little bit different and maybe opening it up a little bit, has there been any thought, or would you recommend to them the idea of implementing like a little playground or something in between a building so that it could be more family friendly? Because I agree with some of the public comments that were submitted that we don't have that many areas where families could go and have their kids there. And so maybe there's an in-between where you could break up one of the buildings and put like a little gated area for kids to hang out so that families could bring their kids there. Just an idea, and if HLC thought that would maybe be a good idea.
Well, I can't speak for the other commissioners, but I would welcome something like that.
Is that what you're going for, like with quirky? Like, would that be
No, but that's,
Okay.
I never even thought about little kids playing.
Because I know that's something that our community
Yeah.
really needs, and
Yeah.
the funk zone is not super conducive to the kid-friendly area right now, and that could be something that would be a big benefit and different, as well as addressing Commissioner Bauke's point of, could we break up the building, even though I agree with Brian that it does visually look broken up just by the way he's designed it, but maybe there could be an opportunity to bring something like that in, if HLC thought that was a good idea.
We might.
Okay,
And maybe it'll be proposed by Mr. Cornell next time we see him.
great,
Who
okay.
knows? Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. And then to the applicant, not Brian, but yep. Hi. I wanted to thank you for the work that you've done to get some community support. Obviously, I've heard really great things about the Post. I haven't been yet, but I'm planning to go this weekend. In terms of the tenants that are currently there, what kind of outreach has been done with them? I've had a couple people reach out to me regarding the folks that are like the Stonewall folks that are
I
there,
mean,
like-
we're friendly with all of them. We use the landscape for all of our landscape up and down the Central Coast. They're
That's
great
great.
people. The Stoneyard just changed hands to a new owner about a year ago. We've been very upfront about, the family that sold it to us had them on month-to-month leases for about 20 years. So they've always
Okay.
known this
Okay.
was an eventuality. We have a great relationship with them. They're in various stages of their careers, but we have a really open dialogue. They're totally aware of the plans, and for some of them, it's time to wind it down. For some of them, they found new sites. There are 4 tenants, the 2 major ones, but we're in touch with them all the time.
Okay, great.
And if I might, I just feel very strongly, David and I have worked on projects from Rockefeller Center to Palisades Village, coast to coast on boutique retail projects. This is all that we do. Making a hole in the building on the Yananali side, a physical pass-through, would be an enormous mistake. And I'm only saying that having sat with this for 4 years. It's something we've thought about deeply, and I was in the HLC meeting. I don't believe the intention of the comments was in terms of, and as we heard from the representative, activation in terms of literally prying it open. I think we've done a really nice job trying to meet, and I actually feel very strongly that we do meet those standards in the code, that it is varying. I have 3 kids, so I can say this, we design all of our projects specifically so, and I have a young 4-year-old all the way up to 12. 12-year-old was a 4-year-old at one point. A place where the parents can sit down and relax and not worry about their kids getting hit by a car. And what we do here by making this a sealed, safe environment is exactly that. And then the varying heights of things to jump and play on, only to say we've thought deeply, deeply about all the issues that were just discussed. I wanted you just to know that we've definitely thought about it. I didn't answer a question that you asked.
But that's okay. I was going to ask you that next. So you kind of jumped into it. So
Yeah.
so you obviously have a lot of experience in this. So from your perspective, this is going to be an area where you can bring kids. Will you put some type of little play thing for kids?
Oh,
and
yeah.
stuff like
I think that it's really funny. We built with the Metro in Los Angeles, they had a really underused area right next to one of our projects. We leased it from them and then built a park. And in programming the park, we were like, okay, let's go put some swings in. And what we ended up doing, our designer was kind of brilliant. My kids were really young at the time. I didn't quite get it. I think my oldest was 2 or 3. He says, kids play on everything. He says, we're going to design. So he put a bunch of rocks, right? Mm-hmm. And then these sort of wood, almost like pedestals. And it gets more use than you've ever seen. The thing that we have in town here is we have incredible parks. Within walking distance, if you walk down to the ocean, you can get to great parks, right? With swings and slides and all kinds of stuff. I think that the way that we think about this is again, varying heights, places for kids to run up and down the stairs. I think about my kids just running up and around. So I'm happy to think about specific play pieces. I just think we have a lot of those. What we don't have is a place where the kids can go run off up and down and the parents can know that they're going to be safe, and for kids to play on just the built environment. In my experience, as both a parent and people who build these centers and own a lot of them, that's what we usually do.
Okay.
But I'm really happy to consider it. I'm an empathetic ear, I'll say.
Yeah, it would be great if you guys can just, it seems like you've put a lot of thought into this.
Yeah, we keep
So as long as if you're not open to kind of opening up the building, I think if you can think about ways to ensure that this can really be a kid-friendly
100%.
environment, that would be great, because I do think that's something that we're just missing in the Funk Zone. I hear you on that we have parks and all that, but we don't have a lot of areas. Like, I think of like La Cumbre Mall. It's not somewhere really where like, it's just not very, it's open, but it's not really like kid-friendly. So
100%.
there's just,
I have an idea about specific places too to do some stuff, but
Okay.
yeah, David's got kids too. We're in the mindset of thinking about
Great.
that. I'm happy to think about it.
just trying to think through, we have, a good bar scene in the Funk Zone, right? And that's going great. But
Yeah.
what we're missing this component. So I appreciate your consideration
Of course,
all that.
thank you for the suggestion.
So thank you. That's my last question for you. My last question is for staff. Staff, just for Ms. Kennedy, if you could just explain for the public why this property is not eligible for housing, that would be great.
Sure. This project is located in the Cabrillo Plaza specific plan. So when that was prepared years ago, the different areas of the specific plan allowed different uses. So Area D, which is what this is, does not allow housing. It was not part of that. Other areas, like Area A, allows housing, but this one does not. It's the M1 zone and everything else allowed within that zone.
And so the only uses are allowed is retail, industrial, commercial, and a
Commercial.
small percentage of office, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, great.
Yes, thank you.
That's the remainder of my questions. We'll now turn it over to my fellow commissioners for deliberations. Who? Yes, sorry. Lucille's not here, so.
Lucille's not here, so maybe I shouldn't.
No, she'll watch the hearing.
We
She'll
did do
appreciate it.
for her, so I wanted, if I can find it, let's see. Here we go. Okay.
Michael, if you'd like to head out, you're welcome to. We won't bother you anymore. Oh, now you're committed. Got it. Me too. I'm excited.
There's no sound, but I can hum a few bars. So this is obviously going down Garden, as Commissioner Boss asked, looking at that plaza space. So I think that's the really important part of this project that I think is most meaningful and the biggest connection to the community. And then I think you can see the shadow play along those facades as they sort of, sawtooth along. And the landscaping, this is not showing all of the ground landscaping, it's only showing the trees, and then the experience going back into that driveway, which this tree-lined alley, I think, is going to be very important, and obviously the palms create the border to the 50-foot setback, the ESHA setback. And then the parking area, a lot of this is permeable paving, as you can see. Obviously, we had to comply with all the stormwater regulations. Love that entrance into the courtyard, and as Dana explained, there'll be cascading plants. So again, this is not reflecting a lot of the incredible ground planting that will occur. So there you go.
Thank you, Mr. Carnell. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Beautiful video, as always.
I can put back the site plan for your discussion purposes.
Great, and I've got Commissioner Wiscombe up first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really like the project. I can certainly make the findings and support the project. Just a couple comments. I really appreciate the permeable paving. I should have asked that question before. That's really great. I like the bicycle parking tucked away on Garden Street there, right next to the courtyard, so you can park your bike and go right into the courtyard at the corner. I think that's a great feature. I I agree with Mr. Miller. You start opening up onto Yananali, it's just not a street where you want kids to play or to escape if you've got a couple of them and one does get loose. It's too busy. So I think Mr. Carnell's done a very good job of articulating it so that it breaks it up nicely, articulating the frontage along Yananali. I also am an advocate. I am a retired landscape architect. I'm an advocate of creative play. So I think, doing things that, we have a park, I live on the Mesa, and there's a park next to us where they've cut down some trees, but they've left the stumps, and the kids love to play on them, and they've put one of the logs across, and, it's just become a creative play zone. So if you can do something like that, I think that would be really fun, and it's amazing what kids find to do with different things that you'd never think they would play with, or play on. I appreciate the parking. I realize you don't have to park any cars, but that area of the city is very impacted by parking. So I think that having the 98 parking spaces is very appreciative. And what else did I want to say? I think that's it. So. Yeah, I think it's really a lovely project. And I do hope that you consider maybe some artist studios, where they can work and also sell their artwork. I think that would be a really exciting kind of transition into the funk zone where it's more artsy. So those are my comments. Thank you. Lovely project.
Thank you, Commissioner Wiscombe. Commissioner DeLucia.
I love your idea about the open space. If they can even put the open space within the project for some kids' activities. And it sounds like you've done projects in Los Angeles. Pacific Palisades was Caruso's project, perhaps, so you know what we're talking about. Also, I would thank you, Commissioner Drury, for sitting through all this. And I think something for the building, I love the project, but I do think it needs more color. And I think you guys called that out during your commission. I understand we're trying to get to the Spanish architecture, and that's why the building looks the way it looks on the outside and the surface, but it needs I believe also it needs some more color to stand out a little more. I want to thank staff for all the work they did. You did a great job in your, I think the applicant did the traffic study also, and you guys reviewed it, and I'm very satisfied with the traffic study that was done, and also that you did the secret determination and that checklist. So just from my experiences being up here, sometimes we have not done the checklist, and we really needed that checklist, and I think it's very helpful. And also, I'm glad you're not doing the underground parking. We don't have to deal with all that, with those issues, and the parking's gonna be on the surface, and we can make the findings, I believe, for having the parking and the bicycle encroaching into the setbacks. But I do have to say the landscaping is really nice too. And I love the themes of the landscaping. And I think together with the landscaping, if we add more color to the project, I think the landscaping actually adds colors to the project. And then if you can just combine it with maybe some more color within the buildings, I think that would be great. Let's see if I have anything else here. And also obviously restoring the Laguna Channel. That is terrific too, because we're all for the environment and we want to improve where we live. We do live in a beautiful place, and I'm from LA too, by the way, and I moved here in 2018. So once you come here, you do not want to leave. So I can go on and on, but those are my comments, and I'm really, really pleased with the project. And you know what? We do need housing, but this project will bring sales. We also need sales tax revenue for the city, and the type of businesses that you're putting in there. And so for all of those reasons, that makes me even more supportive of the project. So thank you.
Commissioner Bauke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Very well programmed project. I mean, and I've seen your other work. In fact, I've followed a number of your other projects over the years, so it's very well programmed. I'm going to restate my concern, which is that that's a very, very long facade, even though Yanali has a storage thing across the street today. These buildings will be here, we'll all be dead and buried, and it will be a different thing. So I'll put that out there that while today, I could see Mr. Miller's point that having access out there would not be a good thing, but maybe design it in a manner that someday one of those spaces could be popped, so you tie the courtyard in, so there's some activation of the street. I'll leave it to the architectural folks and the folks at the HLC to have that discussion about whether a paseo or something, or a gateway or something additive could help for that long-term. I will support the project. I think everything else about it was done very well. So, and I appreciate the effort. And the landscape's going to be, very, very good, which will help a whole lot. But I think long-term this will be a good thing. But we need to make sure that it's just an island out there by itself in the long term. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bauke. I'm very supportive of the project. Thank you so much for all of the hard work that's gone into this. I think Mr. Cornell has done a wonderful job with the design of this. I really do like it as it is now, but I appreciated Commissioner Bauke's points kind of looking to the future, but I will defer to you all on that. And thank you, staff, for a really great presentation. I really appreciate the efforts that the applicant team did to reconfigure this. I think that having the buildings on the Yananali side is much better than having the parking on this side, which is a significant improvement from the previous proposals that were given. I love the landscape plan. I agree that I think that the landscaping itself can be a lot of the color that comes into this project. If it's done in the way that these photos are, I mean, this looks beautiful, and I think it will be a really added benefit. I also appreciate the work that you're doing on the sidewalk and kind of the leveling up of this little courtyard on the corner. I think this will interplay really nicely with the funk zone, especially understanding that we're having a significant hotel project come in, that now there can be some more uses in the area to help make sure that we're not overwhelming the funk zone. So this is, I think this is a really great project. I can definitely support the modifications and make all of the findings. What was my last thing I wanted to say? And obviously, thank you for the work that you all are going to be doing on the creek restoration and the habitat. So I think this is a really big benefit for our community, and I appreciate the work that's been done on this. So with that, do we have a motion? Commissioner DeLuccio.
I will make a motion with pleasure. Can you put the slide up with the what I need to say? Okay, we can approve the project. We can make the findings in the staff report for obviously the secret determination, front setback modification, interior setback modification, development plan, coastal development plan, and is subject to the conditions of approval in the staff report. So that's the motion.
I'll second it.
Can we have a roll call?
Thank you, Chair Wardlow. I'll begin with Commissioner Wiscombe.
You never begin with me. Yes.
Commissioner Bauke,
Yes.
Commissioner DeLuccio,
Yes.
and Chair Wardlow.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carmen, and thank you to the applicant team and staff. This action of the commission is subject to a 10 calendar day appeal. Great. All right, and that will close out our item, and now we will move to the administrative portion of our agenda. Do we have any committee or liaison reports? Commissioner DeLuccio.
Yes, there was no hearing examiner meeting since our last meeting, but HLC, they did do an approval at 3237 State Street and Las Positas Road. That's the former U.S. Army Reserve Building, which is going to be the American Indian Health Building. They received final approval at HLC to relocate their expanded clinic on that site. And it previously came before the Planning Commission for development permit approval.
Great. Anyone else? Nope. All right. Well, it is now 2:19, and that concludes our July 3rd, 2025 Planning Commission hearing. Our next meeting is tentatively scheduled for Thursday, August 7th, 2025. I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of their day and a happy, happy 4th of July.
It's got to be a record.
Baby, you give me ice and fire. You're giving me wind and rain. You're some kind of butterfly. Baby, you give me midnight. You whip up my appetite. Don't leave me here high and dry. Oh, well, I don't wanna jinx it, baby. Don't wanna overthink it, baby. It's just